This week's conversation with Dawn Fisher of Morning Glory Needleworks is sponsored by the Embroiderers Guild of America at egausa.org. One of the EGA highlights is the Through the Needle's Eye virtual exhibit. The current exhibit required 2 galleries to display all of the beautiful pieces. Set aside some time to enjoy a lot of stunning needlework in a fun virtual gallery experience. The December virtual lecture is Reviving the Art of Embroidery, Lady Victoria and the Founding of the Royal School of Needlework, presented by Lynn Hulse. The lecture will be presented December 17 at 1 p.m. Eastern. Registration is now open through December 15, and use the code FiberTalk5, that's FiberTalk and the number 5, all one word, to get a $5 discount on this and any of EGA's virtual lectures, including previous recordings. Also, check out the classes that will be offered at the 2024 National Seminar, Preserving Needle Art, August 14 to 18. Registration is open now. Join the Embroiderers Guild of America at egausa.org, and thanks to the EGA for their continued support of Fiber Talk. Now, our conversation with Dawn Fisher. Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Beth Ellicott.
And you're listening to Fiber Talk, the twice-weekly podcast for needlework artists. Our artist this week from Morning Glory Needleworks, Dawn Fisher. Dawn, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, reproduction samplers and much, much more. Okay, it fascinates me in this reproduction sampler world because there's a whole bunch of people doing it. And you'd think at some point we'd run out of samplers to reproduce, but that clearly is not happening. But what is even more interesting to me is every single one of you seems to have your own personality or whatever it is that influences what you buy and what you reproduce, because you all seem to have your own little channel of samplers. So you think you've seen them all, and then you come along and it's like, well, I haven't seen anything like that, because you really have some different ones from most people. And it interests me. Is it a personality thing? You're just drawn to them?
I think so. I like ones that are unusual. I collect morning samplers, not like daylight morning, but memorial samplers.
Right.
I collect unusual samplers. It just depends on what I see. One I bought just because I had this fabulous big parrot on it, and I just thought it was great. Just something, different. I have a lot of samplers. I have a lot that are just plain samplers, but I have some really unique, unusual samplers. And I have so many more I want to reproduce. It's just, finding the time, because It's just me. I do everything on my own, all my own stitching and charting and writing the instructions. But I love it.
So the collection, it sounds like the collection is a big part of what you do. You just enjoy collecting them.
Yes. I've cut back some because I have so many, but I still look at them. I always look, and if something pops up that I just have to have, I get it.
So do you have them hanging on the wall, or do you have them archived, like in archival boxes?
A lot of them are in boxes. A lot of them are not framed. The other ones that are framed are actually kind of standing on end in my studio. Or my office, sewing room, whatever you want to call it. I'm actually in the process of getting my house ready to put on the market so I can sell it. So, they're kind of just, like I said, in my office, leaning up against the wall so I can pull them out as I need them.
Yeah, but that's a good one, Beth, because when you own that many, does proper storage get to be an issue? Or if you keep them out of the daylight and semi-dry air, are they pretty good?
They're pretty good. I have a couple of archival boxes and archival tissue paper. I've also visited like behind the scenes at some museums and other places, and they, talk to them about how to store, the way they store their samplers that aren't framed. And some of them I take out of the frames, others, it just depends on what kind of condition they're in. One of them, I was looking at it really closely and realized there was live insects in the sampler, in the wood, and that happens sometimes. So that one I took, I did unframe it carefully.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then did you have to freeze it? Is that what you did with it?
No, because they were in the wood, I just, I examined it really closely. I know you can freeze them. I've not done that yet. That's the only one where I've actually found live insects. I think there were termites in the wood of the, it was actually, the sampler was from 1709, and it was attached to a piece of wood, nailed to a piece of wood, and there was termites in the wood, and that happens sometimes. So it took me about 2 hours to unframe it because it was nailed. So I had to pull out each nail individually. And then, of course, as soon as I did that, the wood went out in the garbage, and everything else was cleaned up. And, I just, like I said, I keep it wrapped in tissue paper or muslin. It depends.
Yuck.
Yeah. That's the fun
Right.
of dealing with, a lot of them, they smell. I've watched other people's videos on how they deal with samplers, and, a lot of times they're musty, they smell, they've been in, an attic somewhere. So it's, luckily most of mine aren't like that. That was the first one with the bugs, which like I said, I took that one apart right away.
Yeah, no
Right.
kidding. Yeah.
Right.
So basically, as you once there must be some point like half dozen or 10, and then you start to have to become an archivist. You have to start to really concern yourself with proper practices. Then.
Yes. I'm, like I said, I've taken a lot of conservation classes. I'm not a conservationist. I like to learn. I take a lot of classes about the history and the background and how to care for them. That type of thing, just so I can take care of mine.
Yeah. Do you clean them? Do you clean them, or just get them so they're not going to deteriorate anymore?
No, I don't clean them. I don't wash them. I just try to make sure they're, said a lot of them are very fragile. So you just have to, kind of, some are laid flat, some are rolled up. It just depends on the condition of them.
Yeah. Is it mostly from auction houses, or are you one of those who traipse around estate sales all the time?
All of the above. Auction
Okay.
houses. I have somebody, a gentleman on Facebook that sells them. I bought them off of eBay. I do a lot of antique shows and flea markets. We had a little antique shop for a while after we retired, and then my husband became ill, so we had to close it down. But matter of fact, I'm going to one tomorrow to see what I can find. I'm actually not looking for samplers, but you never know. And
That's addicting to start going to estate sales. Like I keep showing my
Yeah.
husband pictures to say, "Don't you want to go to this one?" And he kind of looks at me like, "No, I can't get him to bite on that one."
Yeah, we used to go a lot, every, there's I don't know if you know Florida, but there's a city called Mount Dora, and they have a Renegers antique market, and 3 times a year they have these big 3-day extravaganzas. So that's like in 2 weeks. So I plan on going up for at least one day. And then there's a big flea market the Monday after that. So I plan on going to that. I've been starting to travel again. I've had a lot going on over the last few years, but I'm starting to go back to flea markets and antique shows and stuff.
Are those productive in that just about every time there's one that you could buy or that at least interests you, or is it really hit and miss?
It's pretty hit and miss.
Okay.
You never know, and the hard thing is some people think their samplers are worth way more than they are. I took a class on pricing needlework and samplers, and on doing the research, and some people are just crazy and some people have no idea what they have, and those are the ones I like.
Right, right.
So I'll pay, of course you bargain with them, but I don't try and talk them down too much. It depends on what it is. And I've got a lot of times I'll buy ones that are in really bad shape, but yet I can figure out what's missing.
Yeah.
So I can reproduce them. And then those you can get pretty reasonable. And as long as I can, like I said, figure out what's kind of missing off of them, I can reproduce them. I don't need to buy another sampler. I have so many I could reproduce now. It's hard to decide. I have one that I'm working on finishing up right now, the instructions, and it's pretty complicated. It's got a lot of different stitches and 30 different colors. So the instructions are, it takes a while. It's not just cross stitch. There's a lot of other stitches involved.
Yeah.
Right. So that makes me ask, so what draws you to that type of sampler? Because I'm drawn to them too. I like doing cross stitch. I love doing cross stitch, but I'm also like, okay, I love doing the different kinds of stitches. So what draws you to doing those, to reproducing those?
Usually it's the stitches. I love stitches. I collect them. I have, a program, and I buy a lot of books, old books, new books that have stitches, even though I probably have that same stitch in another book. It doesn't matter. I just needlepoint stitches, embroidery stitches, every kind of stitch. And it makes it a little more challenging to reproduce and stitch. And it makes it more interesting. I love cross stitch, but again, it's fun to do something different, and it adds texture. One of my favorite stitches is queen stitch, which a lot of people hate, but I love it. And it adds something to the piece. And
don't you think sometimes some of those, like the queen stitch, I haven't done that much of it, but every time it takes a time to get used to it, but it does add so much texture to the piece. And it's just a matter of practicing those, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah. And there's a couple different ways to do it. I have the way I do it, and then other designers, instructors have different ways. But yeah, I don't know why that stitch just stood out. I use, of course, I like eyelets, and I don't know. There's so many stitches out there.
That's true. And like even the one, my dreaded, the Montenegrin, which it gives me headaches to do. I love the texture of it.
Mm-hmm.
I could do it in a straight line. It's just moving around that I have issues with. But it's a beautiful stitch. I can see why people used it for vines. It adds so much texture.
Yes. Yep. That was one of the first stitches I learned back in the 80s, when I first started learning about samplers.
So how did you learn different stitches? Did you teach yourself with a book, or did you take classes?
Oh, I took classes. A lot of it now I've taught myself, but I started cross stitching in 1980. And then I was very lucky that I joined Embroiderers Guild of America very early. And in the neighboring town, Eileen Bennett lived. I don't know if you know Eileen Bennett, but she had the business, the Sampler House, and she's still teaching, not a lot to this day, but I believe it was her first class she ever taught on her first sampler. Home is where you hang your needlework. And it was the first time I stitched on linen. And here I am learning all these different stitches. And back in the 80s, I mean, we didn't have the linens that we have now. You know, you had like 35 count and maybe 28 count. But she taught this sampler, and I learned, I don't know how many, 12 different stitches. I don't know. And I actually still have the sampler and that I stitched. And it just inspired me. I had no idea. And I just started buying books on samplers. And I think Dutch motifs or motifs from antique Dutch samplers, I believe the name of the book is. I think that was the first one I bought. I actually lived in Holland, Michigan, so there was a lot of Dutch stuff going on. But I was hooked, and I did all of Eileen's samplers, and I tend more toward brighter colors, and she was more the muted browns. So I started changing the colors on her samplers. And then I went, hey, I can design my own samplers. So that's when I started. And like I said, I went to EGA, and I started going to national seminars and regional seminars. And I took as many classes as I could. I still take classes. Now I tend more toward notebook classes, learning history and preservation and other things like that, because I don't need another project, as I just bought like 3 new patterns in a sampler kit. But, you know.
Yeah. We all do that. Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you got plenty of good company there.
Yeah.
I think people, you know, because I've been a member of EGA since 1990 when I discovered them, I think people discount how much you can learn from going to those meetings. I don't think I've only attended one region, and that was because we put it on. And I've only been to 2 nationals now. But you learn so much when you go to those classes. The camaraderie of other people who have such a passion for the same things we do. I think it's neat that you learned from Eileen Bennett too, because I have one of her pieces framed in the basement. I rediscovered it doing some cleanup, and it's a beautiful piece. And we all chose our own color, so everyone is different in the guild, but we helped each other with all the little different stitches. So yeah, she was quite the teacher. I mean, I didn't know she was still teaching though.
I don't know if she's teaching so much. I did see her. It's been a few years at a national seminar. I saw her on merchandise night. She was set up close to me. So I'm not sure how much she's teaching. I don't live in Michigan anymore, so I'm not, close to her. Right. But I do, see her stuff out there.
Yeah.
What is it about reproducing the samplers that, what drives you? Is it the history and preserving the history, or do you just like charting them, which I can't imagine is all that much fun?
Well, it can be, but I like the history. I try and do research. It's very hard on some of them. Like I said, I have the one from 1709, and I'm trying to I was trying to find out some background, and it was too hard. I could not find much on the girl that stitched it. I do, like I said, I do a lot of research. I try and if I can find out a background, or a lot of times it's a verse or something on the sampler that I can find. I take a line from the verse and Google it and see if I can find it in a book or a hymn book or whatever from around the same time frame as the sampler, something to give a little more history. I have one sampler, a Scottish sampler, and I actually, I found the girl on Ancestry.com. I found when she came to the United States and some of her history. And then I actually contacted one of her relatives that lives in Australia. So that was really cool. That one I have not reproduced yet, but it's on the list, But that's what I like to do, is see if I can. It's the history. I love it, and what was happening when they stitched it. Now I wish I would have majored in history or something, because because I love that, finding out all this, and and of course the stitches and the colors. And if you can unframe them and look at the back and see what it really, the piece really looked like, because they're usually pretty faded on the front. And
right.
So
so that begs the question then. So how do you choose colors for your pieces? You obviously don't unframe everything. Do you choose from the front then?
Yeah, if I don't unframe it, I choose from the front. That's kind of all you can do. Well, you could change the colors, but I try and stay pretty close to the original. I don't care if people change colors on the ones I design. It's their piece, whatever. I try and stay pretty close. I have a little tiny miniature sampler, and I actually charted it I've stitched it two different ways. I give two different colorways. One is the faded colors on the front, which are muted, and then the brighter colors on the back. So, because it was so small, it wasn't that much more work to stitch it twice.
Yeah, that's an interesting split. People who want when they stitch a reproduction, they want it to look old and dingy, dirty, faded, like the one that they see. And then the others, I'd like to see it, stitch it the way it was originally, and, brighter colors. And I'm of the second camp. I want to imagine it when it was like it was new. But a lot of people like to have that old look to it.
Yeah. Yes. And I prefer the brighter colors, because I feel a young girl isn't going to pick a bunch of browns. I think if there's pinks, and bright blues available, that's what she's going to pick. Yeah. So I like both, but I do prefer the original colors. Some of the samplers, I'm almost afraid to unframe them, because I don't know what I'm going to find inside, and, they could fall apart if you take them out of the frame. It depends. Yeah.
No, and when you talk about getting those that are pretty beat up and being able to fix them, that's got to be exciting to have a ragged sampler and put it back together, effectively put it back together so it's like it was when it was originally done. That's got to be fun to do.
Yeah, and to see what they did, how it came together, and what was originally on the piece, to figure out what are the words. One of them I bought, I couldn't figure out what it was, the whole bottom of it was over one, and finally I figured out it's the Lord's Prayer, so that I could chart it, just because I knew what words should be there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You mentioned before we started recording that you retired just before the pandemic. Did that really turn you loose on your business, really allow you to expand it and to start putting out more charts, or did that just give you more stitching time?
All of the above.
Okay.
It did and it didn't. unfortunately, like I said, my husband became ill, and so I became his caregiver, but I was also then at home all the time. So I did do some stitching, and I started doing floss tubes and things like that. I couldn't travel much, but I could teach over Zoom. I could do the floss tubes. I could reproduce more and stitch more. So that helped. We also, like I said, we also had an antique store for a while, but we ended up closing that. So it did and it didn't. In this last year, I've really started expanding my business more and my travel. I don't know how many retreats planned for next year, and 3 classes that haven't been announced yet, but I've got, that I have planned to teach for next year. So, but I'm going to a lot of retreats and vending. I'm going to EGA National next year. I'm actually taking a class, so I'm excited about that. But it's just, I want to get out there and do more.
Yeah. Did Morning Glory Needleworks, did that just evolve out of your addiction to samplers, or when you started buying samplers, did you say, hey, I'm going to start reproducing and make a business out of it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It kind of did. I started designing on my own back in the 80s, and you have to remember back then, back in the ancient days, there was no internet. To sell my patterns, I had to advertise like in Just Cross Stitch magazine or one of the other magazines.
Yeah.
And then people would write to you, and you had to have to send them a flyer with all your designs, and then they would send it back. So it was a lot more challenging.
How antiquated.
I know. I don't know how I did it. Obviously it didn't go real far. I did start teaching a little bit then, but like I said, when we moved that was my first husband. When we moved to Florida, it was too hard. So I just kind of put it aside. I was still stitching, kind of designing, but just for my own, gratification. And then in 2000, I went back to school and got my degree after we got divorced. And then when I graduated, my mom gave me some money, so I actually went back and graduated from college when I was 50. So yay!
Wow! Wait a minute. So you had, holy smokes! So you a marriage, a divorce, a business, went to school and graduated from there when you were 50. Holy smokes!
Yeah, I was working full time and going to school full time.
Oh my word!
And
bravo!
Yeah, thank you. And so anyway, she gave me money, so I bought a laptop and I invested in some really good cross stitch programs. I'd actually bought. Back in the 80s, we had like an Apple computer back then, and I bought some of the first cross-stitch programs that were available back then. They're nothing, like they are now, but so I was already designing on the computer back then. Pencil and paper drove me crazy. Anyway, yeah, so that's when I decided, okay, I got my degree. And I got a degree in business management because that's what work would pay for. But I went to a liberal arts college. So I took as many art classes as I could squeeze in there that they would pay for. So it was kind of fun. It was an adults only nighttime, college. So it was great. Anyway, and then that's when I really started, like I said, designing. And it was actually a few years later when I really started, I think 2009 I designed Alphabet of Stitches, which has 26 different stitches, one for each letter of the alphabet. And that one kind of took off, and that's been a very popular class. So I've taught that. I've taught it in all, from like one coast to the other, basically Seattle. And I taught it in Iowa and New England. So, I've kind of been all over with that. And then my button box class has been very popular again. I've taught that one all over. So,
yeah. Did you always know that Morning Glory Needleworks would come back? Was that always part of the plan, that you were going to reach some point where you're going to put it back on its feet and get going again?
I hope so. That was because needlework meant so much to me. It really, this last year especially, it's really helped me stay sane. After my divorce, I really I got hooked on shepherd's bush patterns, and that I just stitched those like crazy and just nan. And then of course I started doing my own, but the needlework, it really helps me even now. It's helped me a lot through everything that's gone on, and kept me sane. And going to the retreats, the stitching community, my friends, when I go to the retreats, they're all there and supportive, make sure I'm okay. It's really helped.
Yeah. Is designing your own work something you find yourself doing more of, or does the reproduction stuff still occupy your time?
Both. I do both. I like to design my own, especially for teaching pieces. I do have one sampler I may, it's the one from 1709 that I may use as a teaching piece, because it's very different. But I have so many ideas in my head. I actually have a file where I I write down what, I need to do this, or this is an idea for the future. It's just kind of become my life now, and I really like it.
More ideas than you have time for is probably
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So many inspirations. If I see a verse, I just go, I have to put that in something. So I write it down and save it until I can, make something from it.
Right.
But that's got to be what's so nice about retirement, is that you can pursue this passion and not have to squeeze it in the evenings or on weekends, and be able to do it at your pace and at whatever level is comfortable for you. That's got to be take an element of pressure out of it and replace it with some fun, I would think.
Yes, definitely. And being able to, like I said, now that everything's cleared up and I can travel, and just being able to get away and be inspired by people, and going places, going to seminars. I try to go to a lot of lectures at museums and think when I can. Colonial Williamsburg, I've been there, Sturbridge Village, all these places. They just inspire me, to do more.
Yeah. Teaching or learning, which
Both.
way do you go? Both. Both. Okay.
Both. Those I go to learn, but I also, I love to teach. Teaching runs in our family. I think my grandmother was a teacher. My mother was a teacher. Her sisters were teachers.
Oh.
My sisters both taught at one time or the other. And my mom also had a quilt store and taught quilting. So, I think teaching just kind of in my blood. Maybe I just like to tell people what to do. I don't know, but
there's an element of that. That's okay.
Yeah. I love sharing my love of stitches and the history.
Yeah. But
And
there's nothing like seeing the light bulbs go on in a class of students. That there's nothing quite like that. It's
yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And see them get a stitch or go, oh, I thought that was going to be really hard. Now that you've explained it, it makes sense now.
yeah,
Or if I can teach them an easier way to do something. Since the pandemic, I learned how to teach over Zoom. So I bought a camera so I have a frame with plastic canvas on it, and then I can put the camera on it and demonstrate the stitches so people can actually see how to do them. Instead of just looking at a diagram, I can actually demonstrate it and show them how to do it. So, I hope that usually helps, because some people are very visual. Some people can do it from a diagram. Some people need to see it done,
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one thing that came good out of the pandemic was people learning how to use Zoom and to teach online. And that I think it has disadvantages and it has advantages. One of the advantages, though, is every student can see you doing that stitch as big as their screen is. I think that's a huge advantage now with Zoom, and learning something new.
Yes, and I can reach more people because I can teach people that are all over the United States at once, or all over the world, whatever, at once, instead of having to travel. And it also helps the smaller guilds that they don't have to pay the expenses to get their teacher there,
Right.
to teach
Right.
for them. And the only thing I don't like is I'm used to walking around, and helping everybody. And that's harder over Zoom. So it's it goes both ways,
Right. Because you can't go and see their work, or you can't see their face if they're struggling.
Yes.
And that's I understand that that's an issue. That is an issue. But it is nice, to not have to pay for the flights, the hotel, and everybody
Right.
gets to sleep in their own bed,
Yes. Yep.
Are you seeing a growth of stitchers outside of the U.S.?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a member of a lot of groups that have people from outside the U.S. I've done some other online classes, and there's been people on there from Australia and, England, all these different, or I've taken classes from or listened to lectures from people in England, or overseas somewhere. So the internet and Zoom has really helped with that, I think, is people can take classes no matter where they are. And, they don't have to travel either.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the big plus. I just wonder, because it gives such a reach that you wouldn't normally have if you had students from outside the country popping up in your classes, that you just don't expect.
Yeah.
Do you have a regular schedule of classes coming up? Is that yet to be done?
It's yet to be done. Like I said, I'm just kind of now. Well, I do have, like I said, probably 3 classes scheduled. No, nothing's been advertised yet for next year. But then after that, I'm working on getting proposals sent out for like Embroiderers Guild seminars, regional, national, all that, different groups to teach for. I love to travel, but again, I know that's not always possible. I taught a group that was in California and I'm in Florida, so that worked out good. It was kind of weird because they were 3 hours behind me. So, I'm starting the class at like noon or 1 instead of 9 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
But it worked out great. And I I just taught a class for EGA, one of their online classes, and it was people just signed up, and then it was a 4-part class, and parts of it were released every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I created videos to teach them how to do the stitches so they could, the diagrams I provide are pretty clear, but like I said, a lot of people are visual. And it was on the Star Spangled Banner, so it had a lot of history with it. I like to add history, if I can, to my pieces about, like the Star Spangled Banner. I talked about, who made it and all the information from the Smithsonian on it and where it's at and how it's been preserved. And I have a sampler on Martha Washington that tells her life history. Every band in the sampler represents part of her life. So, and the war and all that. So I try to provide, more than just stitches.
Yeah.
If I can.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the beauty of samplers in general is you have that extra element. Yeah.
Yes.
The Beth, you were wondering about the stitch a day. I didn't come across that in my research.
Yeah. So how did you start the stitch a day idea?
The sampler, you mean, that I
Yes.
designed?
Yes.
I don't know. I just love stitches. Like I said, I'm doing in my floss tube, I do a stitch a month, stitch of the month. So I teach a new stitch on the first of every month. And then I just, I don't know, I just kind of got it in my head that I wanted to do a sampler that you could, do one stitch a day, learn a new stitch or variation of a stitch every day. So it's available in my Etsy shop, but it has 365 different stitches, and they're small. The whole sampler is not that big. I stitched it on 28 count linen, but it's just every one day you stitch the outline to a little box. It's like 8 stitches by 8 stitches, I think it is, or 16 threads square. And you do the outline. The next day, there's a little stitch in the center that you do. So a lot of people started it January 1st of this year. And they just work a stitch a day. I did it in bright colors because that's what I like. But I've seen other people do it in fall colors or different colors or shades of blue. And one person was talking about doing it as a temperature chart, which I think would be great, a temperature sampler. I don't know how you do that, if it's the high temp for the day or the low, whatever, but so it was just something to do a little bit every day. Most of the stitches won't take you very long. Some are a little more complicated than others, but it's just that way you're inspired to pick up a needle and thread every day and work on it.
And learn something new. That's what intrigued me. Is you're learning all these little stitches, which and then you have a visual of those stitches to refer back to, which is what samplers originally, that's what they were for, right?
Yes.
To be a reminder of a stitch or a pattern, so you could reproduce it in another spot if you wanted to. Yeah, I like that idea. I was like, just one stitch a day. I could almost do that. That, and I've seen your button box done. Someone on FlossTube had done that and showed that box. And it intrigued me when she showed it because I live next to the Mississippi River. And there used to be a huge button making factories around here. So you can still find them, antique buttons at the stores that are local, that were produced locally. And I thought, what a great idea to use up those buttons that we all collect and put them on a box.
Yeah, and it was from I got my one of my grandma's button boxes, and that's what inspired it. I was actually between jobs. I took like a year off from working, and I wanted to do something happy. And again, it's the bright it's sulky thread, but the bright colors. And I love playing with buttons, so that's what I did. And it's a fun class because the kit includes all the vintage buttons you'll need, but people bring their own. And if I can, I try and bring a bottle or a jar full of buttons with me so people can dig through them, because that's the fun part. And everybody's is different. They all have the same pattern, but everybody's looks different because they're using different buttons, and it's a lot of fun. That's one of my favorite classes.
Yeah, it's a neat looking project. Yeah, it really, really comes off well. Is that so? What is the base? What is the box? Is it a metal box, a wood box, or?
No, it's a Whitman's chocolate sampler box.
Oh,
the Whitman's chocolates.
Okay.
And that's what makes it easy. Is it's not hard to finish. You actually glue stuff down. I provide everything, the batting, there's foam core. It's got a banding that goes around it, that you pre-finish banding that goes around it that you stitch on, and just everything's glued down. Recently, Whitman's decided to change their box.
The nerve of them.
I know. So I had to redo the instructions and restitch the button box so I could, rewrite the instructions. So when I teach the class now, you get both instructions depending on if you have the old style box or the new style box. And, I just couldn't believe they did that to me.
Yeah.
I know.
They should have checked.
Nerve.
They should have checked.
I know.
Professional courtesy here.
I know. They have made profit on a lot of boxes because people bought boxes to take the class, and then they had to eat the chocolate. So
well, I know. Yes. See, this is the part that I'm liking about the class is that I'm going to have to empty it somehow. Yeah.
Yes. And I had to empty a couple of them because I had to restitch it and that kind of stuff. So it was hard, but I did it.
See, when we do annual awards now, you're going to be a leading candidate for sacrifice.
Yes, absolutely.
Stitching sacrifice. Yeah, you ate boxes of chocolates.
Yes.
That's tough, boy. Oh, and then I had put down the one that caught my eye was the Ma Belle chatelaine.
I haven't taught that much. It's that one you can do it as a sampler or a chatelaine, and what it is there's different bands. I provide a lot of different bands for the sampler. I teach the stitches, and then you decide what the next band will be in the sampler, and then I teach another row of stitches. So everybody's is different. It's very unique, and it has a lot of different stitches, and you can use it as a chatelaine where you tie your scissors or whatever or something to each end of it and wear it over your shoulders, or as a display piece, a bell pull or whatever. But that one's fun because, like I said, everybody's is totally different. I may redo that one too, just because I do that sometimes.
Yeah, well, that was what I liked about it, was that it encourages people to do their own thing. And create their own. Yeah, that's because I think that's important for people to get away from just mindlessly reproducing what a designer's put together and kind of make your own path. So.
Right. And I encourage that in my classes. It's like, if you don't like the color I chose, use your own color, change it up, whatever. I'm not offended. because that's how I started. The samplers I saw were all like in browns and greens, and I didn't want that. So I prefer the brighter colors. But if you want the muted colors, hey, go ahead, do it however. It's yours. Make it yours.
Right. And I like that idea of that chatelaine, because I like mine to be different than everyone else's. I don't want mine to be exactly the same. And so but it gives that framework where it's not a huge leap. It's not like you're designing your own piece from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
You give the framework. Yeah, which is fabulous.
The also was interested that the other techniques you do, black work, white work, drawn thread, is that just a diversion for you, or is that an area that you're going to explore more?
I am exploring it some. I do like black work and white work, pulled thread. I don't do a lot of drawn thread where you actually remove. I think I've done almost everything. I will do anything. I will try anything, but I always go back to my counted thread. But I do like black work. The sampler from 1709 that I reproduced had a lot of the double running, the reversible. I mean, actually, the entire sampler is reversible, but I do like that, and I need to. I've had a piece that I've redone it a couple of times. That's a teaching piece. That's black work and white work, and then I have a little mini sampler that I sell. That's the design. It ends up being maybe 4 inches high and 2 inches wide, and it just gives you a little taste of how to do double running, reversible, and how to do white work, the pulled thread, the satin stitch, that type of stitching. I'm not an expert in the reversible yet. I know people that can do it, that it looks exactly the same. I like double running. I do it a lot when I'm doing, even when it doesn't call for it. I like the challenge of making it reversible, not having back stitching. A lot of times it leaves big lumps on the back, or threads are carried and you can see them through the front.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, black work's fun. It adds a whole lot, and I like the brain work of trying to make it as reversible as possible.
Yes,
because you do have to think your path out.
Yes.
But, yeah.
And when I teach it, I have a few, like on my alphabet of stitches, there's a little bit of black, just a little, that's a thing with that pattern. It's just a little bit of every stitch, so you can try it. And I tell people, if you want to do it in back stitch, go ahead. I'm not, make it so it's enjoyable for you. I don't want stitching to be a chore.
Yeah.
I don't want my class to be work. I want it to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, go rake leaves or something.
Really, if you're not going to enjoy it, don't,
Right.
Yeah. Why?
Don't do it.
Why do it?
Yeah. So you said you had a sampler that you're working on that's coming up next. Does that have multiple stitches in it, or what's that one about?
That is, I think I sent pictures of it. It's a reproduction of a sampler from 1885, and the original sampler's about 40, I think it's 40 inches long. I don't remember the exact dimensions, but it's, and it was done on canvas with wool, but I've reproduced it with DMC floss on 28 count, because there's a lot of over one. It has 10 different blocks on it. It's like there's a block of stitches and then a band of like 10 continental stitches of a pattern of flowers or leaves or decorative design. So there's 10 of these blocks with dividing bands, and then there's a border around it that's also done in tent stitch. It's like a flowery decorative border. And each of the blocks is a different stitch and different colors. The sampler itself has 31 different colors in it.
Mm-hmm.
Each block is kind of a different color, and they're very different. They're some are like satin stitch. There's others that are like a star stitch and diagonal stitches. And it was a lot of fun. I've had the sampler for a long, long time. That was one I bought on eBay, and I had it for a long, long time. And I bought it because it had a band. One of the dividing bands is Morning Glories, and I collect Morning Glories.
Okay.
So that's what attracted me to it. And I actually took it many years ago. I took the little bands and made a sampler out of it called Victorian Silhouettes, which is one of my most popular designs. And I stitched it over one on 32 count linen. And it's just monochromatic, one color on a different color background, so it stands out. But I decided during one of my floss tubes, I had pulled this sampler out, and I was looking at it and went, I need to reproduce the whole thing. So that's when I started. And the reproduction's about 4 inches wide and 35 inches long. And it's beautiful. The colors are so bright. And I took the same colors, or as close as I could, to the wool, and figured out how to diagram all the stitches and all the different colors. And it was kind of challenging, but that's what I like. I like a challenge, and it's a lot of fun. And everywhere I've shown it, everybody's been, oh my God, this is so beautiful, because it's very bright. The colors are like purples, lavenders, blues, greens, browns, and shades of brown, but they're with red. It's really, really pretty, bright colors. So that's what I'm working on. And because it's so big, I'm not going to frame it. The original is not framed. It's backed with some kind of, I can't figure out what the fabric is. It's almost maybe like a waxed fabric, or it's like a shiny cotton fabric, but it's like it has some kind of coating on it. I don't know what. And then it has, that's the back, and then the front, and then it has ribbon around, silk ribbon around the edge, which is falling apart, but to hold it together. And then they actually put a piece of brown paper in the middle. So it's the sampler, brown paper, fabric on the back, and then ribbon around the edge. So I am not going to put brown paper in the middle of mine.
No.
So yesterday I actually went to the store and figured out I got some like interfacing, because I want something between the front and the backs.
Yeah. And not brown paper from a grocery sack.
So anyway, but I'm going to try and get that put together, and because I bought just some cotton sateen. It's like a shiny cotton fabric for the back of it. So and some bias tape to put around the edge. So it'll be kind of like the original, because when I travel, I take most of my samples with me, and it's hard enough with the stuff I have that's framed. So this will be easy to roll up and take with me, and because you really need to see some of them. The pictures never do them justice.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Never.
That's right.
Well, I have to say, when I saw those pictures, I got to have that one. So hurry up.
Okay. As soon as we're done, I'll get working on it.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but is it going to be a class, or are you selling it as a chart?
I'm going to sell it as a chart, I think.
Oh, okay.
That way, I can get it out there and get more people to do it. I have a lot of other classes in my head, but sometimes you just need to sell stuff.
All right. Well, put us on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I will let you know.
Number 1 and number 2, right on the list there. Yep.
That's right, because I can see you putting it on one of those. What do people collect? They're like spools. So spools.
Yes. Yes.
And then
Absolutely.
you're having it all wound up in a basket or something, and then you just unroll it.
Yep.
If you want to show people, it'd be beautiful.
Yes. Yes. I agree. And it'd be beautiful hanging or in a basket, whatever. And I have another new teaching piece out that's a little spool too. It's called Spool of Stitches. So I'm working on that, but that one will be a teaching piece that's got like 30 different stitches to learn.
Wow. How many days does it take you to teach a 30 stitches class? How?
That would be 2 days,
Okay.
a 2-day class. The button box is like a 1-day class with pre-work, a little bit of pre-work, and then some of the other classes are 2 days. Like the Alphabet of Stitches has 26 different stitches, and I actually have a new companion piece that goes with that. So there's 2 Alphabet of Stitches now, and then because I love stitches, and then the new Spool of Stitches, which that's another one. I finally figured out how to finish that one, so I got to get that one done and get that one ready. I've sent a couple of proposals out for it already, and I think I'm going to be teaching it next year, but no announcements for sure on that.
Boy, all kinds of things going. Well, yeah, I got to have that one because I have a spindle for it to go on. That's exactly what I had in mind for it, was to wrap it around one of those antique spindles, and I have one. So, yep, put me on the list. Got to have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Okay. Be sure to follow me.
Don, thanks so much. Wow, that's fun. You
you.
really have a collection. That's some really unique and fun stuff. Thanks for sharing with us.
You are welcome. Thank you for asking. I'm glad to be here.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep. And thanks to everyone for listening.